The only sacred reason I chose the night shift was to escape the mental pollution created by human voices. During the day, the city was a massive knot of noise vomited onto itself. The meaningless shouting of sweat-soaked passengers, the endless, unanswered questions piling up at bus stops, and the crude sunlight that stripped everything bare and shoved its flaws into your face. All of it carved wounds into the folds of my mind. But the night was like a merciful veil. Dot as the orange flicker of streetlights stretched across the asphalt like wet snakes. That massive heap of dot metal dash. The bus became my pen, and the steering wheel my staff. The route number was 13. This was no coincidence. It was a silent wager the universe had made with me. Superstitious drivers who believed in urban legends would make the sign of the cross or quietly recite a prayer when they heard the name of this route. Unlucky, they'd say, as if a number had a will of its own. I used to laugh until that night, until the first moment reality tore open. The rain stabbed into the bus's metal skin like cold needles falling from the sky. The wipers kept a monotonous, hypnotic rhythm on the windshield. Shrak-pat on the radio, a detuned frequency, crackled as a muffled voice homed an old arabesque, as if singing from beneath a grave. As I approached the stop, my foot didn't go for the brake, because the stop was nothing more dot than a void, swallowed by darkness. And at that exact moment, behind the curtain of water swept, aside by the wipers, I noticed him. The man wasn't standing in the lit area of the stop, but right at the sharp boundary where light ended and darkness began. He was tall, unnaturally tall, to the point of defying human anatomy. He wore a heavy wool coat, its color washed clean by time and filth, belonging to no discernible era. His face was trapped in a corridor of shadow between the coat's raised collar and the wide brim of his hat. I felt his gaze on me. It was a physical pressure, like a ton of cold air collapsing onto my ribcage. I opened the door. The hissing hydraulic sound sliced through the silence of the night like a blade. He didn't move. He just stood there. "Are you getting on?" I called out. My voice echoed through the empty bus and returned to me. No answer. Just as I was about to close the door, time dot slowed for a brief instant. He took a step, but he didn't walk. It was as if he glided out of the darkness and seeped into the cabin. He didn't tap a card. He didn't even look toward the driver's seat, without touching any of the metal handrails. As if gravity had no claim over him, he moved to the very back seat and sat down. I checked the rearview mirror. His head was slightly bowed. His face was still inside that ominous shadow. At that moment, a poisonous realization spread. Inside me, there was physically a passenger on the bus, but ontologically, there was no one. That seat was both occupied and opening into an infinite void. 1 stop passed. 2, 3. No one got on, no one got off. The city flowed outside like a gray dream. I couldn't take my eyes off the mirror. The man didn't move. He sat there with the petrified patience of a statue. "Which stop are you getting off at?" I asked. This time, my voice came out, thinner, trembling. The silence grew like an avalanche. That's when I noticed a distortion in the mirror. The interior of the bus had its usual dimness, but the back seat where the man sat, it seemed to absorb light. Photons that fell there didn't return. There was a darkness, like a black hole, Dot devouring the fabric of the seat and the man's silhouette. I tore my eyes from the road and Dot looked back. The seat was empty. My heart began pounding as if it wanted to tear through my ribcage. I slammed on the brakes. The tires screamed against the asphalt, echoing in my ears. I turned on the hazard lights. Dot stood up with trembling hands and walked toward the back. With every step, the air grew colder. The seat truly was empty, but when I touched the fabric, my fingertips froze. It was soaked. Dot is cold, odorless wetness, as if not a person, but a melting block of ice had been sitting there 4 hours. The next night, at the same hour, I found myself at that stop again. One part of me screamed. 2, run, but something deeper perhaps. That dark mechanism we call fate pulled me there. It was exactly 1:42 a.m. He was there again, this time not in the shadows, but directly under the lamp. The coat was the same, the posture was the same. When I opened the door, I saw his face, and I wished I hadn't. It was familiar, so familiar. It was like seeing every detail I recognized from the mirror, but on someone else, except for one thing. The skin on that face was lifeless, Dot like the bark of an ancient tree. The eye sockets were 2 bottomless wells. He boarded. He didn't speak. As the bus moved, I watched him through the rearview mirror, and that's when I encountered a new dimension of horror. The reflection was delayed. I turned the steering wheel, and the silhouette in the mirror turned. Half a second later, I shifted gears, and his hand remained motionless. Time flowed differently. For him, he lived in that narrow crack between my past and my future. "Don't you want to get off?" I shouted. It wasn't a question, it was a plea. He slowly lifted his head. Our eyes met in the mirror. I doubled over, as if punched in the stomach, because the thing staring back at me was my own face spot, marked with a pain I hadn't yet lived, a death I hadn't yet tasted. His mouth didn't move, but his voice echoed inside my skull. "Not yet." The bus engine suddenly coughed like a dying creature and stalled. The headlights didn't go out, but dimmed like shrinking candles. The radio static shifted into a frequency resembling human screams. The doors locked. Behind me, at the nape of my neck, I felt that icy breath. "I always got off on this route," he whispered directly into my ear. His voice carried the exhaustion of thousands of years. "Tonight, it's your turn." When my eyes fell on the mirror, I couldn't even scream. The person sitting in the driver's seat wasn't me, or rather it was him, but he had taken my place, and I was sitting in the back seat, in that wet, dark void. Control over my body had left me. My bones had turned into lead ink. The bus started moving on its own, like a driverless beast. It stopped at the station in front of my home. The door opened. "Get off," he said in my voice. I couldn't. I resisted. I screamed like a prisoner trapped inside. My own mind, but that me, the stranger in the seat, closed the door and stepped on the gas. I was left alone at the stop. Under the rain, when they found me in the morning, I was as cold as a corpse. When I opened my eyes in the hospital, I understood that the seams of reality had come undone. The unfamiliar way the nurse said my name. The doctor looking at me as if I were a ghost. The police came. They asked questions. I said Route 13. They looked at each other. One of the DOT chiefs leaned in slowly. "Son," he said, "Route 13 was cancelled 2 years ago. No one's used that number since the night shift driver disappeared." I froze. What was the driver's name? Primera? Whispered. I heard my own name. When I returned home after being discharged, my apartment felt like a museum filled It up memories from a life that wasn't mine. I approached the mirror and tried to touch my reflection. When my fingers touched the glass, my reflection's hand was still in the air. That cursed half-second dot delay. I was now residue left behind by time. I'll never forget the horror on the woman's face at Human Resources. She looked at the screen, then at me, and said, "Deceased." The date was 2 years ago. But I had been behind the wheel just last night. Or so I thought. I hadn't actually gotten off that night. I had been trapped in a two-wheel loop. The tall man waiting at that stop was me. I was my own ghost. Every night, 1:42, boarding that bus, sitting in my own seat, leaving my reflection behind. Now I sit in my room, waiting for the clock to strike 1:42. A heavy engine sound rises from outside. The window, the familiar hiss of tires. On wet asphalt, I part the curtain. Below, under the pale glow of the streetlight, stands a massive heap of metal. Rotor, Tressé. I look at the man in the driver's seat. He looks back at me. In the emptiness of his eyes, I see my own lost existence. He lives in my place, sleeps in my bed, eats my food, uses my name, and I am nothing but a reflection. But tonight, something is different. The bus stops, the doors open, that familiar voice rises from inside. "Get in." I understand. This is not an end, it's a handover ceremony. I will take that seat. He will remain at the stop. And until the next me arrives, I will steer this wheel on the dark asphalt, on the timeless Route 13. I go downstairs. The rain starts again. It's 1:42. I don't tap a card. I don't speak. Dot. I sit in the driver's seat and look into the mirror. My reflection moves on time. For now.